Ineffa is finally here, and it feels like her potential is quite conflicting. Because on one hand, Ineffa's personal damage is actually really nice, but the new Lunar-Charged reaction itself that Ineffa enables for the team, not so much. Which is ironic because she needs this reaction to do good damage herself. I know it sounds weird, but I'll fully explain why that is. However, there's definitely some interesting ways you can build and play Ineffa right now. In fact, some of the weapon and artifact loadouts I will showcase really surprised me, and frankly, out of 14 plus teams I will show to you, a good amount of them ended up performing really well. So if you're interested in learning what's the best way to build Ineffa right now, or if you want to understand the peculiar situation she's in, and use that info to decide if she's worth pulling for, well, keep watching this video. Okay, so there's a lot of things I want to show you about Ineffa, but I will keep things simple when it comes to explaining her kit because other creators already did that, and instead, I want to focus on showcasing Ineffa by going over her pros and cons, as well as her builds and teams because, from what I've seen, there's some stuff here others haven't covered yet. Plus, I also want to share my thoughts about her at the end because I do think we need to talk about her current state. Alright, let's first start off with Ineffa using Kitane Crossspear. While its damage potential is on the lower end when compared to other polearms shown here, Ineffa does require a good amount of energy recharge, so this craftable spear is perfect for that. And then she's also equipped with Gilded Dreams 4 set, but I'll cover many other artifact sets later on in the video. Also, her talents are raised to levels 9, 10, and 10, and of course, she's Constellation 0. Now, on the first look, her kit seems super convoluted, and you'd be right about that, but it's really just the new shenanigans that Lunar-Charged reaction brings into the game. And in reality, all you have to do with Ineffa when playing her as off-field support is just use the skill and then burst, or sometimes it's better to use skill, swap out to use some teammates that shred resistance or boost Ineffa stats, and swap back to do the burst, and then do whatever, since her trusty robot Brigitte will be handling all the heavy lifting. Still, if we take a look at her elemental skill, she summons Brigitte who deals initial damage, and then will keep on attacking for up to 20 seconds, which results in 10 hits or so. Also, when the skill is casted, Ineffa grants an electro shield, and its thickness usually can absorb roughly 11 to 13,000 HP, which is pretty nice. But what's really cool about the skill is that periodically, every hit has a chance to produce a particle. Usually I get around 6 of them, but I did manage to record once when it produced 9 particles, which is quite a lot, and this means Ineffa can be a good energy battery for the team. By the way, the shield can also enable some nice teams like Clorand with Eshu Sword, which I'll show in a moment. Now, as for the burst, while the multiplier is huge, it doesn't really do that much damage. Usually it's about as strong as 1 or 2 Lunar-Charged attacks she can cause herself, and the burst animation is also quite long. But the real reason it's worth using every rotation would be the second passive, which grants 6% of Ineffa's attack as elemental mastery for the whole team for 20 seconds. And this will usually at least be around 120 EM. And if that's not enough, similar to Fischl or Emily, casting the burst also resets the duration of Brigitte. And it's funny, since burst only has 16-second cooldown, while skill's duration is 20 seconds. And in this Taser team, for example, you can finish up the rotation and restart it with the burst, while her skill is still active. But yeah, now let's talk about Lunar-Charged quickly and how it works. So, thanks to the third passive, anytime anyone in the team causes electro-charge reaction, it instead becomes Lunar-Charged, which will be indicated by this thundercloud that appears above the enemy for roughly 5 seconds. And while both of these reactions share some similar traits, Lunar-Charged instead only causes damage every 2 seconds, unlike electro-charged, which does it every 1 second. However, this new reaction can score a critical hit, and on top of that, the way its damage is calculated depends on how many units participated when applying their elements. For example, these 3 teammates contributed to the reaction. The one who would cause the most damage, their number is first added to the reaction. Then, second unit's highest damage is added, but only half of it, and then the third and fourth unit's damage, only 1/12 of it is added, or basically almost nothing. So, in other words, unlike Electro-Charge, whose nature is very random when deciding whose elemental mastery is used to determine the damage, Lunar-Charge makes it so that the unit who has best stats for this reaction, namely elemental mastery and critical rate and damage, usually will be the main contributor. That's pretty much it. However, thing is, when compared to Electro-Charge, this new Lunar reaction is about the same in terms of DPS potential, at least right now, and maybe once Nod-Krai units start coming out, it might become beefed up. I mean, Hoyo has secretly revised few things already to accommodate this new reaction. If you haven't noticed, Thundering Fury now states it also boosts Lunar-Charge by 20%, or when looking at Aoife's first passive, it also now says he's boosting this new reaction. And yeah, there's the new signature weapon, and even Ineffa's first passive that each give a boost, but all in all, this reaction still remains not that amazing for improving team's damage. Oh, and by the way, just make sure she achieves 2000 attack to max out the passive's Lunar-Charged damage by 14%. Although honestly, this cap is super easy to reach. But what is amazing though, Ineffa's first passive. Basically, as long as there's a thundercloud above the enemy, each time Brigitte attacks the enemy, she will unleash an additional attack that is treated as Lunar-Charged damage. And while this multiplier looks super underwhelming, the reality is, the way it's calculated internally actually becomes her hardest hitting attack. And it essentially happens every 2 seconds or so. If that's not enough, this specific attack also scales off attack stat. So even with Gitane's Spear, she can easily unleash 40k plus attacks in this free-to-play taser team. And overall, Ineffa can unleash around 380k damage while off-field with Gitane, and roughly 500 to 600k damage with her signature. So about 30 to 40% better. Now, here's the fun part. Because Lunar-Charged reactions and this special Lunar-Charged attack only care about EM, attack, critical rate, and critical damage, anything that boosts her electro damage or just straight up damage percent buffs, they are almost negligible because when looking at her total damage output, more than 85% of it is made up of just Lunar-Charged attacks, while skill and burst barely contribute, which would be the only ones benefiting from damage percent buffs. So, long story short, in majority of cases, Ineffa wants to utilize attack percent main stat on Sands and Goblet. Very rarely in teams like Hyperbloom, maybe it's worth going for Elemental Mastery Goblet, but overall, her best and most simple loadout is going to be Attack Attack Crit or ER Attack Crit if you're struggling with her burst uptime. Oh, and of course, like with any transformative reaction, resistance reduction from things like VV Set or Shalonen are absolutely amazing for boosting Lunar-Charged damage. And that's pretty much how Ineffa works. And I hope you now understand why Lunar-Charged reaction is quite underwhelming for the team, and only superb for Ineffa, since it enables her to unleash those big attacks from her passive. Anyway, let's talk about the teams and loadouts I've tested. Let's start with a twist. You've noticed I leveled Ineffa's normal attack talent, and that's because you can play her as a hyper carry in a few teams. First one I tried out was good old Shenyun Plunge team with C6 Benny and Furina. While Furina's damage percent buff is almost useless for her skill and burst, it is pretty good when Ineffa does her pyro plunging vapes. On top of that, I equipped her with Hunter's Set, since HP drain allows her to obtain that big beefy 36% critical rate, and overall, yeah, it's a fun team that can cause overvape reactions together with Lunar-Charged. Also, notice how with Benny's attack boost, her Lunar-Charged hit that scales with attack is hitting for over 70k damage. Pretty crazy. You could also go for free-to-play variant, Sucrose, C6 Benny, and Xingqiu. It won't be as good as Plunge comp, but it's still pretty decent. I was using Ballad of the Fjords along with Gilded Set here, and by the way, those of you who are crazy enough to get this polearm from Battle Pass, at Refinement 5, that massive 240 EM boost is quite significant, both in this team and many others, so it's a really good 4-star weapon for Ineffa. In fact, the best, and only behind few other 5-stars. But what about Ineffa in Bloom teams? Well, with Nahida, you definitely want to bring 2 Hydro units, since otherwise, it's hard to get rid of that little Gremlin's Dendro aura. But overall, it's a decent team. I wouldn't call it crazy, and I was even using Staff of Scarlet Sands, the second best weapon option for her along with Gilded Set. The problem with this team is that there's no proper driver. Ineffa only deals white damage with her normals, so those attacks end up being suboptimal. Another similar team I tried out, but this time Quick Bloom with Sino, it's about the same, maybe better or worse, depending on how you pilot it, and ironically, it's better to give him his own signature here, and then use some other weapon on Ineffa. In my case, I went with Calamity Queller, since it's pretty decent on her. Now, moving over to some more serious teams, Neuvillette, Shalonen, and Furina is a gold standard in the meta, and I did try my luck squeezing in Ineffa here. In fact, she was only equipped with a double 2-piece 18% attack sets along with Favonius Lance, just to test the waters. And it's alright. Obviously, support off-field Ineffa is best utilized with Tenacity Set, but Neuvillette doesn't care about attack. On the flip side, if you go for Taser team with Nuvi, he could be equipped with TTDS in a team with Benny and Kazuha to hyper boost Ineffa's Lunar-Charged damage, while Nuvi is the on-fielder. It's an alright team. You could probably drop Benny and use other Electro or Hydro option too. Another fan favorite I'm sure is the free-to-play Taser with the Bros, Auroran, and Aoife, along with Xingqiu. It felt pretty nice. I made sure Ineffa was just equipped with Gitane's Spear and Gilded Set to live the life of free-to-play, and while it won't shatter records, it's not the worst team, but definitely not the best either. Although, it depends on the enemy, and I'll talk about that in a moment. Finally, let's go through all the Ineffa support variations while using Tenacity set. Not only does it give a nice 20% attack boost, but also makes her shield better too. And with this set, I tried many teams. For example, Cloran, who was equipped with Eshu's sword, loved it, although she didn't really dish out that much damage compared to Ineffa, which is funny because this means Ineffa's damage is almost power creeping Cloran here, and she's supposed to be a support. Then I tried a couple of overweight teams. It felt especially good with Arlecchino. This team of Benny, Xingqiu, and Ineffa felt super synergistic. I mean, heck, might as well try Hu Tao comp. Instead of Benny, I use Xilonen, and while you might say it's bad if Xilonen's Cinder City doesn't buff electro damage, well, as you already know, Ineffa barely cares about it, so this team works just fine. But of course, who can forget the Natlan heroes? Chaska felt extremely good while playing with Ineffa, although one funny thing I've noticed is that giving Chaska Vivi set instead of Obsidian Codex usually results in better team damage because now not only Chaska's Rainbow Bullets get the Rest Shred benefits, but also Ineffa's Lunar-Charged and even skill and burst attacks benefit from this. Then as for Mavuika, what can I say? When her burst deals as much damage as Ineffa's entire kit, I mean, they're fine together. And also, note I'm using C6 Mavuika here. But even at C0, her synergy with Ineffa is a little awkward, since there's no good Hydro Night Soul unit to maintain Lunar-Charged. Lani is just sitting sad in the corner right now. And then finally we have Varessa. It's a pretty good team variation. I liked Ineffa using Favonius here, and one of the teams I used was with Shenyun and Farina, but you could go for something like this as well. Still, I didn't really cover Thundering Fury's set, but from the initial calcs, it's decent. But the skill cooldown reduction barely matters, and that 20% damage to Lunar-Charged isn't that amazing to be honest. But I'd say you could still throw this set on Ineffa and feel absolutely fine. Same goes for a Noblesse set. If you don't have any of the other sets I've showcased, this one is also decent. Look, the thing is, right now I would say Tenacity is best general set for boosting everyone's attack, while Gilded set is a bit better when it comes to improving Ineffa's personal damage. But in reality, I wouldn't bother farming right now either of the sets. Just use whichever one you have, because it's clear from the hints that have been left all over the place, 6.0 is probably going to introduce some kind of a new set for lunar reaction units, and in that case, I would just save up my resin for when that set comes out. If it doesn't come out, or if it's not that great for her, well, then either Tenacity or Gilded is your best bet. And then as for weapons, I feel like her signature is very powerful on her. Like, it will always be clear in showcases when she's using Fractured Halo because it gives a massive boost to Lunar-Charged damage, and as long as her energy recharge requirements are met, usually around 140 to 160%, this weapon will be just a different experience when using anything else, sadly. So, what do I think about the Go-Go Robot Vacuum Lady? I think her potential right now feels sort of locked. The new reaction feels underwhelming, it's only good enough to enable her own personal damage, and she doesn't even have a dedicated artifact set. Well, at least as of making this video. I kinda wish she was more like Nilo, who technically also changed the way how Bloom works, but at least with her, you could throw together a bunch of teams and still cackle in madness as you see groups of enemies vanish into the void. But I get it. Ineffa is still work in progress. Nod-Krai will be introducing more stuff to do with lunar reactions, and it's not just me speculating. The livestream cast confirmed this, so I do hope that Lunar-Charged becomes wackier or stronger with newer units. I just hope that maybe new artifact sets or maybe new revisions will be made to Ineffa after Nod-Krai update, so that she can feel complete just by herself. However, don't get me wrong, she's still a really good sub DPS, and you can even play some funny hyper teams too. She definitely packs a punch just by herself. Also, one thing I've noticed is that the upcoming Cactus boss, both in Abyss and Stygian endgame modes, will be vulnerable both to Electro-Charged and Lunar-Charged reactions. And I've also seen from other early access videos, the upcoming Abyss cycle will give a massive buff to Lunar-Charged damage. So I'm pretty sure once those new cycles arrive, Ineffa will feel ridiculously good. But that's been part of Hoyo's strategy for a while now. Introduce a new unit and design the next temporary content around it. Nothing new here. But to sum it up, I think Ineffa by herself is great, but the new reaction is not that amazing for anyone besides herself. Still, she has access to some really good free-to-play weapons like Kitane Crossbear and Favonius Lance, although granted, it's only available on weapon banners, but still, I'd say if you really like the way she works, or you enjoyed using Fischl and or Emily, she's kinda similar to them. Well, especially to Fischl, and you can also use them together in some teams, so hey, double the fun. Anyway, hope you found this video useful and fun to watch. I'd really appreciate if you could press the like button on it, share it with others, and subscribe to my channel. Sadly, I was yet again not invited to Creator Server, so I had to work 24 hours straight on this, but I hope this was worth it, and you found the video enjoyable. Thanks for watching, and see you soon.